Which San Jose Shark will be the next or first to secure a big-time contract from Mike Grier? All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now and Inside the Rink. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you got to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be looking at which player is going to get the bag, as the kids say. Who is going to be kind of the first long-term big money contract from Mike Grier? As you know, Mike Grier has been very, very methodical with the contracts that he's given out, but want to kind of look ahead and look at some guys who are on the roster right now. Look very, very, very early look at the 2024 free agency class and see if, with the Sharks having the spending power that they're going to have this offseason, if that might be the time with Mike Grier. And they'll look at some young players who I think are going to be potential big contracts for the Sharks down the line. But it's very interesting looking at the cap hits, right? The biggest contract so far that Mike Grier has signed is the Mario Ferraro contract. That's a 4-year, $3.25 million. So 4 years at $13 million. That's the largest contract he has given out in his year so far. He's given out some other Matt Benning with the 4 years coming out up to $5 million. Capo Kakkonen, his 2-year deal at $5.5 million. Cunnin, his 2-year deal at $5.5. But he's been very, very we're going to stick. We're going to be, coupon shopping. We're going to be, working towards trying to clean up our cap sheet, working towards trying to get younger players on the roster, moving out some of these big contracts, right? The Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, plenty of big contracts have been moved out, or potential big contracts, and looking at Timo Meier. And you're starting to see, at least next year, you're going to start to see the fruit start to bear a little bit with this. So just as a reminder, next offseason right now, the Sharks are projecting, with Cap Friendly, projecting the salary cap at $87.5 million. That number is subject to change depending on a lot of different things. But as of right now, the Sharks are going to go into next offseason with $36 million in free agencies in cap space, with a roster size of 14. They're still going to have plenty of players that they're going to have to re-sign. You're going to look at a lot of that 2020 draft class is going to need new contracts as they kind of move, continue to move through the system, guys. But a lot of those guys are still going to be under control, right? Your Bordelots, your Brandon Coes, your Adam Raskas, like Jacob Petersons. A lot of these RFAs, you're still going to be under very cost controlled. As for Sharks entering the last year of their deal, Kevin Labanc, Mike Hoffman, Anthony Duclair, Alexander Barabanov, Oscar Lindblom, Philip Zadina will be an RFA, Radim Shimmick, Jacob McDonald, Capo Kakkonen, and Luke Cunnin, who will also be an RFA. Majority of these guys probably aren't going to be on the team next year, but there are a couple of candidates who I think could earn themselves long-term deals, or at least big money contracts going forward. And, what's a big money contract? I think that is very much up for description of what you want to consider, if it's the average salary or the term. But I think just looking at guys who could be looking for kind of big jumps in their pay, and two guys out of there really stick out for me with those guys, right? We know Kevin Labanc's probably not going to be back. He's been on the trade block, right? Mike Hoffman, 33, probably won't be, he's probably going to be traded sometime before the deadline. Lindblom, unless Lindblom really has a massive season, probably won't be back. Radim Shimmick, we're not even sure if he's going to make the team out of camp. Again, probably won't be back. Jacob McDonald, like if you want to bring him back a vet min type of deal to be, to play on the Barracuda, or an AHL deal, whatever. Capo Kakinen, again, if he has a big season, unless he has a big season, I think the Sharks continue to look for their goalies elsewhere. But Duclair and Barabanov are two guys who I think, if they have good seasons, could earn themselves a big pay raise. Barabanov's an interesting one, right? Because he's 29. He just turned 29 over the summer. He's been on a, kind of signed that 1 year, $1 million prove-it deal with Doug Wilson. Then he signed that 2 years at $2.5 million under Joe Will, and has really been a kind of a diamond in the rough for the Sharks, right? Last season had 47 points in 68 games. The year before had 39 points in 70 games. And, you feel like he's kind of hitting his stride right here. And, he could be a guy where if he goes out and puts up a 55, 60 point season, the Sharks could be very interested in maybe signing him to a longer term, bigger money deal, especially with guys coming off the books like a Kevin Labanc, right? What if you just gave Barabanov the Kevin Labanc deal, basically 4 years at $5 million at AAV? We'll see. I don't know if I would be interested in doing that, but again, Barabanov has, every time I've doubted Barabanov, I think he just goes out and continues to do great things. And I know he's dealt with a little bit of injuries last year, only playing 68 games. But I think they kind of shut him down at the end of the season just because they don't want to rush him back. But when he's been out there, he's produced, and he's made Logan Couture look so much better since they partnered those two together, right? Kind of taking some of the pressure off Logan Couture. Or you could maybe get yourself a nice piece at the trade deadline for Barabanov. So it'll be interesting to see. But he's one of those guys where I could kind of, picture going into this offseason and, maybe you kind of give him that Kevin Labanc deal and hope that he can continue to be a 50, 60 point producer for you. I remember when Doug Wilson re-signed Kevin Labanc, that was the thing. We need Kevin Labanc to be a 60-point guy. Kevin Labanc was never a 60-point guy. Barabanov, if Barabanov is a 45 to 60-point guy, maybe 4 years at $4 million, that feels pretty fair to me. And you would get him basically through his age 33 season. So you know exactly what you're getting from him. And I think he can continue to fit in with the Sharks as they continue this rebuild. So then the other guy is going to be newcomer Anthony Duclair, who did, got hurt last off season training. Didn't have this season. I think he wanted coming back from injury, but has been a goal scorer in the NHL, right? He's had a 30 goals campaign in the 21-22 season, has put together another 20 goal campaign as well in the 19-20 season with the Ottawa Senators. He's also done it with he's been a guy who has scored goals wherever he has gone, and he has struggled with some injury history here and there. But I think he's going to get every opportunity to score. And again, also kind of, he's 27, just turned, or he's about ready to turn 28 at the end of the month here. So the timeline is going to be a little weird with him too as well. But, if Duclair kind of hits the ground running with the Sharks, and he's going to get every opportunity because there's really not a ton of goal scorers on this team. Duclair could be one of those guys. If Duclair puts up 30 goals, 25, 30 goals this season for the Sharks, and they want to keep him, he's going to be looking for a kind of a pay raise from that $3 million contract that he is entering the last year of his deal. So that's another guy who I think, again, timeline, pretty close as well, or you could I would sign him to maybe a 3 or 4 year deal, kind of maybe that 4x4 again. But again, if you score goals, you're going to get a little bit more money compared to Barabanov, right? Barabanov's more of a kind of a playmaker assist guy. Duclair, more of a shooter, goal scorer. And I think the goal scorers are, of course, going to get a little bit more. So it would be interesting to see what Mike Grier does with Duclair, especially if he does have a 25-30 goal season, which I think he's more than capable of doing, especially when he's going to get all the first team power play, first team out. Like, he's going to get all the chances in the world to score. So maybe this is just a classic pump and dump where you try to get his value as high as you can, and then you trade him at the deadline for the best possible asset. But again, if looking ahead, if Mike Grier wants to, if he fits in with the system, maybe him and Eklund have some great chemistry, whatever it is, and you want to have a guy who can kind of continue to help some of these younger guys and actually put the puck in the net, which the Sharks, as we know, struggle to do. Duclair, I think with a goal scorer like that, you're probably maybe looking at $5 million plus a season, and I would not go long term, but maybe if you do a 3x5, right, give him that $15 million over 3 seasons. That's and then lets him try to kind of get one more contract type of so. Those are 2 guys I think that are potential long, kind of big money. None of these guys I'm signing to 7-year deals, but these are guys who could be looking to kind of get some contracts. And I think the right season could be potential. They're either going to get re-signed by the Sharks or they're going to get traded at the deadline. And that's how both these guys' future is, at least. So before we look at some free agents that Mike Grier would have to open the purse strings for, and if he wanted to try to kind of, we know he's going to acquire talent at some point. So want to look at some names out there and see what they could potentially cost. Before we do all that, though, do want to take a quick break, talk to you guys about our good friends over at FanDuel. And football season, guys, is here. We've got preseason going on now. Regular season is right around the corner. And if you want to win big this year, FanDuel is giving you a chance all season long, because right now when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. So if you think this is the year the Niners finally do it, win the Super Bowl, you get bonus bets for every victory they have in the regular season. And those bonus bets you can use on spreads, player props, overs, unders, more. If you pick, you want to, the Niners to win the Super Bowl, and then you want to bet on Christian McCaffrey to have maybe over under touchdowns, or you want to bet on him every week, maybe to score a touchdown, whatever player props there are, right? You get to root for your favorite team to win the Super Bowl, and then you get to root for your favorite players on your favorite team to do stuff as well. So right now, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. So we know with Mike Grier's plan, right? He's kind of cleared the runway to be able to use some of this cap space here pretty soon, right? Kind of trading the Erik Karlsson's 4 years at $11.5 million to kind of eat it in 2 years, right? With the Sharks again, they're gonna have some cap space next year, $36 million. Again, you're going to need some players to sign, of course, and some guys are going to come back and some guys are going to be due for raises and stuff. But again, the Sharks are going to have some, if they want to be aggressive in free agency next year and start to kind of turn this rebuild around, they're going to be able to do so. So you might ask yourself, who could be available for the Sharks? That would make sense, right? Not just signing guys because you're signing guys. And the big fish for next offseason, and it's going to be one of the biggest storylines of this entire season, is, of course, Auston Matthews, who, again, I'm just putting names out there. I am not saying that the Sharks will sign Auston Matthews. I'm just informing you of players who could be out there. But Auston Matthews, the 26-year-old, one of the best players in the world, of course, born in the Bay Area. We know of his close relationship with Patrick Marleau. He is on a over $11.5 million deal, and is going to be looking to be one of the highest, if not the highest paid player in the NHL. again, he's 26. He's in the prime of his career. Former 50 goal scorer. Auston Matthews is one of the best players in the NHL, and is worth every penny. Like, he is worth spending that type of money on. It'd be interesting because we know Doug Wilson, John Tavares, Stamkos. There are plenty of players where Doug Wilson tried to kind of sign them in free agency, but was never kind of able to land that big fish. And if Mike Grier can be the guy to kind of land that big fish, Auston Matthews would be a very, very intriguing option. But again, well worth the money. At 85 points in 74 games last year, like I said, with 40 goals scored. What was a quote-unquote down season for Auston Matthews last year, like, is just absolute stud. Steven Stamkos, much older, right? He'll be 34. I think he's not going anywhere type of player. But Elias Pettersson, who'll be an RFA. So you could, I don't think, again, unless he wants out, I don't think Vancouver's letting him go anywhere. William Nylander, also going to be a UFA. He's on a almost $7 million cap hit. He's going to be looking to be one of those highest paid players, who's 28, again, point per game type of player. Just some other guys to kind of keep an eye on too as well. Sam Reinhart, who I know the Sharks were potentially interested in acquiring when he got traded to Florida a couple seasons ago. You have again a little bit kind of some older guys as well, but those are kind of some of the big names who could be available. This free agency class is going to be interesting because a lot of guys took shorter deals to try to get to free agency sooner because they knew the caps would go up here. So if Mike Grier really wants to kind of reset this rebuild, swinging for one of these big name guys, you're going to have the cap space. It's just going to be one, finding that right contract, but two, can Mike Grier talk these guys into the vision that he is kind of putting together, and then partner those young guys with your Eklunds, your Bordelots, your Will Smiths, your Musties, all that, wherever you draft in this year's draft. But the Auston Matthews would look really nice in teal. Man, could you imagine Matthews 1, Will Smith 2, Beasted 3 down the middle? Like, that's not, yeah. Anyway, that's for another day. But there's going to be plenty of guys in this upcoming free agency where, if Mike Grier wants to try to add legitimate talent, they're going to be able to do that if he really wants to kind of kickstart this rebuild. So it'll be interesting to see how he spends his money and what he spends it on. Again, who knows? Or if he wants to kind of maybe wait another season and kind of see what happens going and let the young guys continue to kind of grow and develop and maybe add some complementary pieces. But if he wants to add a big name, next offseason is going to be an interesting time for him to try to do that as well. So, and yeah, again, especially with not having a lot of big contracts that they're going to have to sign themselves. So, before we look at Sharks players who are in the long run, I think are going to need deals at some point. Again, there is plenty of time for these guys to kind of get paid. But, Mike Grier is going to have to kind of keep this when he does start adding pieces in free agency, kind of keep some money set aside for these guys. Before we get into who those players are and who I think will get long-term deals from the Sharks at some point, do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you got to do is just follow on wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. We're going to continue our State of the Franchise series with the Oilers. So that's going to be coming out later on this week. And of course, we'll have another episode for you middle of the week. We're still working on the details of that, but do want to let you guys know, of course, plenty of stuff coming as we get through the dog days of August here, and then start to ramp up for the season, which will be here before you guys know it. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, for the Sharks themselves, though, I think two names, of course, and we are getting way ahead of ourselves. I think the two names you kind of point to of who are going to probably get big time, long-term extensions at some point. One, William Eklund, right? His ELC actually kicks in for real this season, with the past 2 years of them kind of continuing to slide it. He is scheduled for a contract 26-27 season where the Sharks can continue. He will be an RFA, so that if they want to kind of play the RFA game with him, they can do that. But I think you're seeing a trend by teams, I think especially really smart teams, of these guys who they know are going to be core pillars of their franchise going forward, is just signing them straight to those long-term deals, right? And getting them signed for these contracts through their prime, like the core of their prime, right? William Eklund will be 21 at the beginning of the season. So by the time his RFA deal is up, he's going to be 23, 24. Signing him to a long-term 8-year extension locks him up through age 31, right? That is the prime of his career. Makes sense to me, right? Not kind of, that's where you keep getting in trouble with the your Tomas Hertl, your Timo Meier deals, right? Of kind of playing that bridge game, kicking the can down the road 4 years, and then you're put in this tough situation of, do I sign a guy in the middle of his prime, or do I kind of let him go? And we've seen both instances, right? They signed Tomas Hertl. Hertl had a bit of a down season last year, but you're going to have Tomas Hertl on the books probably until he's 36, 37. Timo Meier, of course, you traded, and now he's going to be the Devils' problem at some point. I still think Timo Meier is going to age pretty well, but I think these guys, again, not everybody, but I think these guys who are your pillars of your team. William Eklund, I think, is going to be a pillar of the team, right? I have him as the second best Sharks prospect. I've been touting William Eklund since before the Sharks drafted him. I think William Eklund is going to be a 70, 80 point player for the Sharks for a long time, and will be probably one of their best players for a long time. Getting him under contract for a long time before he hits his prime makes sense to me, because then you look those prime years when he's in his prime point per game type of player, and he's probably going to be underpaid if you're able to kind of get the right deal. So especially with Marc-Edouard Vlasic, his contract coming off the books that year, right? Marc-Edouard Vlasic's contract expires the 25-26 season. You can kind of just earmark the Vlasic money for William Eklund. That's the hope, at least, right? If everything goes well. And then I think the other kind of big name one, of course, is Will Smith, who right now isn't under contract because he can't sign a contract because then he can't play NCAA hockey anymore. But, again, if Will Smith, if he plays, has an awesome season in Boston College, the Sharks sign him after this season, he's going to be on the same timeline as William Eklund for a contract. That's a lot of ifs there with Will Smith. Be interesting to see how Will Smith's season goes, and if the Sharks want to kind of remember with Bordelot, right? You sign him to ELC, eat that first year. Kind of if you lose that first year, same thing with Henry Thrun, right? It's kind of the price of you do to get these guys to come out of college, gets them closer to that big payday at least 1 year earlier. So he's another guy who's probably going to be, again, you drafted him 4th overall. You hope he becomes a pillar for your franchise. But again, if he comes in out of the gate swinging and is a huge impact player, in 2-3 seasons, you're going to have to pay him at some point. And like I said with Eklund, right, I think it's better just to kind of give these guys their contract right away, get them through their prime, and then you can kind of figure things out afterwards, 8 years from now when when they're late 20s, early 30s. If you want to sign to another deal, kind of see how their games go, you have plenty of time with those. So Quentin Musty will be interesting as well. If he's as good as we think he is, he could be another one of those guys, maybe kind of in that next tier below, right? Maybe a potential, like, if you think Eklund is maybe like an $8 million player, again, we are projecting a lot here. Maybe Smith is like a $9 or $10 million player. Maybe Musty's like a $7 or $8 million, maybe kind of a tier right below Eklund. Those are your kind of your potential big money guys. So I think for some of the other players, right, your Gushins, your Robins, your Bordelos, I think they're going to be a little bit like you're going to play the RFA game as long as you possibly can with them, kind of signing them to those team-friendly contracts. And then they're going to be the guys that once they kind of run through those RFAs where you're going to have to kind of make decisions on them. And if you want to give them something more long-term or kind of those guys still have there's a lot of leeway for those guys, and how their seasons go and how they continue to progress going forward. So, but yeah, I think kind of to sum it all up, this year we'll see what with Barabanov and Duclair. I think Barabanov makes a lot of sense, kind of because he's done it with the Sharks for a little bit longer, especially in the system. And I think he might be a little bit cheaper than Anthony Duclair. I know he's a little bit older, but it's not like he has a ton of hockey under him, right? Like he's kind of maybe more tread on the tires than Anthony Duclair. But again, for free agency, the Sharks are going to be able to kind of go out there and spend with the best of them next off season. So if they want to go big game hunting, they're going to be able to do that. And then just earmarking some money for Smith, Musty, and Eklund. That's kind of what Mike Grier is going to be doing here. As they try to kind of budget and balance the budget for the next couple seasons as they start to rebuild and hopefully start to enter the fun, frisky phase. So anyway, it's fun to kind of look at which players are going to get paid at some point as money starts to become available for Mike Grier. So that's going to be it for me today. Like I said, we'll be back later this week. We're going to be digging into the Oilers state of the franchise. We'll have something else fun for you guys in the middle of the week. Still working on some things there right now. So potential interview, we'll see. But if not, we'll have plenty of good topics to talk about. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter and Threads at My Fry Hole. Until Tuesday night, Wednesday, bye, friends.